What is going on, guys? Craig1287 here. I'm bringing you yet another VR gameplay. This time I'm going to be doing my review for a game called Vertigo. This is a game that I actually experienced very early on in my Vive lifetime. Right when I got my Vive, I think just a week or so later, the demo for Vertigo had been released, and after I played that demo, it had me hooked. I followed everything that the developer would release on /Vive on Reddit. I subscribed to the YouTube channel and followed everything. I didn't play the second demo that he released, but that was mostly because I had experienced enough and I didn't want to have too much spoiled. So I was trying to pace myself. But finally, the full game is out. They did not go into Steam Early Access or anything like that, so they just straight up released the complete game, other than bug fix patching and things like that. So it's nice to finally have actually played the full game in its entirety, and it lasted me about 4 hours. If you're one of those kind of persons who really likes to know how lengthy of the experience it is, then that's about where it is. And in a game that is being sold for $15, I think that is a very fair price, seeing as how typically these days it costs $15 just to go see a freaking movie, especially if it's like a 3D movie or IMAX. Then you're getting into the $22 range for me here at my local theater. And that gives you about 2 hours of something. So I think this is a really good price to time thing. Now, there is no multiplayer, there's no co-op or horde mode or something like that. There's just the single player, so keep that in mind. Now, the sound design and the music in this game are really, really good. I thoroughly enjoyed them. I'm going to get the soundtrack. I think you can actually buy the soundtrack on Steam. So I'm definitely going to pick that up. And hopefully it goes on to Spotify. That'd be really nice. As somebody who jogs and listens to Spotify and something, that'd be really nice for me to have. But the sound design in this game is also really, really good. It adds to a really cool atmosphere. You can hear things like metal pipes that are like falling on the ground in the background or something like that. And there's this part where you kind of go through. Okay, and I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but I'm going to keep this a very spoiler-free review. I'm not going to comment too much on the story. Pretty much not really at all, because it is only 4 hours. There's not so much story to go over. So if I cover anything, really, I'm going to be getting to some spoiler areas. So there's this one part. No, I don't think this is really a spoiler, but you're in a cave kind of a thing, and just hearing the pitter-patter of the footsteps in that, and in other parts where you're in this facility, hearing the hum of the servers and everything. It just really comes together to make a really cool atmosphere that reminds me a lot of something like it's like Stalker, the Stalker games. It kind of just has that kind of atmosphere. Not so much so. I mean, Stalker is like king of atmosphere in the video game industry, but overall, just the sound design is really, really good, and the music, the 8-bit kind of chiptune music that is in the game, really enjoyed that. So props to them. Now, as for the level design and the gameplay, I really, really liked the level design and gameplay. Now, in terms of the gameplay, in terms of like weapons and whatnot, there's not that many weapons. You've got like a pistol. You've got eventually. I don't want to say anything. I kind of want some of this stuff to be a surprise, but you do get more than just the pistol and the smacky wand thing that you get. I don't really. It's kind of like a nightstick, but it's like a lightsaber nightstick that's also got like this shield on it. You might see it in some of the gameplay I have going on in the background. This is just early gameplay. Yeah, so the weapon selection is not the most varied, but the tools and gadgets and things that you also get are very cool. The way you use the teleport tool thing, how you can eventually do some cool things. So I really like that. But overall, I do want to say that this game, the whole time I'm playing through it, it gave me a very Half-Life 1 feel and a very Zelda feel. Obviously in VR. It's like if Half-Life 1 and Legend of Zelda, one of the ones that came out on the N64, either Majora's Mask or Ocarina of Time, if those two had a baby and put that baby into VR, this is kind of like what the game would be. Just something about the way you explore this facility, and it has the overtones of the company, the corporation kind of feel. The way that you encounter the different enemy types. Some of the enemy types reminded me of Half-Life 1, and just a lot of crawling through vents. You do a lot of vent crawling in this, and that's something that you did often in the Half-Life series. So, all those kind of things give me a very Half-Life 1 feel, but then in terms of the Legend of Zelda feel, the vibe that I got was from kind of, it felt like going through a dungeon in Legend of Zelda. Some of the big puzzle areas just kind of had a Legend of Zelda, like going through what was the second boss that you fight in Ocarina of Time? The dragon. I'm having a big brain fart, but it was on Doom Mountain or something like that. And you have that big main hub area that you pass through it a few times. There's this one level specifically, one area in Vertigo. It just gave me that kind of, when I went into that and I just saw the open, massive area, and I could see all the different places that I would be going, and I could already start running through my head like, okay, I'm gonna go there, I'm gonna go there. That thing right there looks like it's something I can do with this, and it just. The way the puzzles, there's some like puzzly puzzles in this game where it's like you could do a physical puzzle like in real life kind of thing, but there's a lot of stuff just navigating the world and figuring out these environments as the puzzles is really, really cool. So I definitely enjoyed that aspect of it. And then just the way you kind of progress as an adventure. It's kind of an adventure game, a very linear adventure game. So that's something that Half-Life also shared. But in Legend of Zelda, you go through and you get introduced to this new gear, this new item, this new weapon, and you're going to be using that very specifically to get through parts of the level that you're on. But also, when you encounter a boss fight, you would use that new weapon, that new gear, or this new technique, or something that you learned to take on the boss. Speaking of boss fights, holy crap, that is probably, I think, my biggest highlight of this game, of Vertigo, are the boss fights. Again, not going to show you any footage. I wish there were more. Like anything that's good in life, you wish there was more. But especially so in this game, because it is, only 4 hours. There's only maybe 4 or 5 boss fights in the game. And I just wanted more, just because of how distinct they were from each other, the way in which they utilized a gear or a weapon or something that you had just recently unlocked or gotten access to, the way that they just use that. And almost nothing in this game is explained. There was one time where I did encounter something where it took me a bit to figure it out, and like right before I did, I noticed some text popping up, and it was like your character's kind of thoughts. There's no voice work by your character, you're a silent protagonist, but it did pop up as if this was like your character's thoughts, and it was like, I seem to remember seeing this somewhere. Again, not wanting to spoil any of it. But that kind of thing happened. But other than that, like, this game is like super not hold your hand. Like, you've really got to figure out, like, every boss. There's a few kind of like bright light or flashing lights, I think is what they call them, is like the video game design term or whatever. Flashing lights or flashing arrows, where it's like the way that it's designed visually is to give it away. Like, okay, this is what you shoot, or something like that. But on a lot of that doesn't happen too often. There's a lot of stuff where you just straight up got to figure it out, but the way that they design the animation, the way they draw your attention to certain things, I didn't get lost I got a little caught up trying to figure some of the things out, but I never had to close it and look at a YouTube video and see, oh, this is how you kill the boss. I never had to do that. So it didn't feel cheap. It felt guided enough, just ever so enough, that you still had to really think about the situation and figure it out on your own. But man, these boss fights, especially number 2, I'll just say that without giving anything away. The number 2 boss fight in this game is one of the coolest boss fights I've seen in any video game ever. Visually, it was really, really cool. And just the way in which you approach the fight, it just feels so epic. The things that you're encountering and the way in which, and it was super like Zelda-y. Like, it just felt very, but just being in this VR space, you kind of have those moments like, am I moving through this the way that the developer intended for me to, or am I just figuring this out on my own and just it happens to actually work? Am I just breaking the system because VR is so much more open than anything else that's ever come before it? So there's just some really, really cool moments. Oh, let's see. So that's pretty much what you need to know. The level design's really, really cool, especially the bosses' levels design. The gameplay is really, really cool. The music, sound design, and again, I'm not going to touch on the story, but I guess I can say that at the end of the game, I had more questions than I had answers. And I hope there's a sequel that can explain some things, because some crazy stuff happens, and I really want to know what happens. And I'd love to just see more, but it's not pure awesomeness. I did encounter 2 glitches. One involved this DNA thingy. Again, trying not to spoil anything, but if the developer is watching, I highly doubt he'll see this video. Even though I actually have been in contact, not in contact, but I've communicated with the developer on Reddit and on their YouTube channel. A very, very friendly developer, so props to them for that. But I doubt they'll ever see this video review. Maybe if it goes up onto Reddit, who knows? But there's this DNA part where you have to present some DNA, and I presented it and nothing happened. I just had to reload at my latest checkpoint, and it worked the second time. So not the biggest thing there. There was one problem I had on one of the bosses. I believe this was like the 3rd or 4th, and I encountered this one attack that this boss did. I don't know it's very difficult for me to explain. As with anything with VR, it's very difficult to convey in words and even in visual. But I couldn't actually show this in visual because it only impacted. I looked at footage of it on my desktop, on my 2D screen on my monitor, and it didn't show through. It was something that only affected my actual HMD, the Vive headset, and it was something to do with my left lens. My footage became like un-3Dified, but there were still some aspects that were 3D, and it looked as if it was darker on just the left lens, and I have no clue if this is making sense. I have no clue if this is something that the developer could replicate to actually fix. I have no clue if this is something that other people have experienced. Maybe I'll get around to scrolling through the Steam forums or something and see if somebody posted something similar. But it got to a point where I actually had to stop the game because I was actually starting to get motion sick because of the weird conflict between the visuals that I was having. So I actually did get I felt on the onset of motion sickness, the saliva coming through, floatiness that I was feeling and whatnot. So that I did have to turn it off, and I was probably fine and back to normal within 5 to 10 minutes. But I waited about a full hour. I went and got some food, and then jumped back in and played through it. It was still happening even this second time around, but I knew about it this time, so anytime it happened, I kind of just closed my eyes and tried to look at different parts of the screen to where it wasn't happening so much. And while it was still happening, I did get through the boss fight, and it never happened again after that. It was only in that one boss fight. So other than that, no other really truly game-breaking bugs, which is kind of stunning when you think about it. This game was made by 2 guys. I think the main guy making it, he was self-taught. He read and also watched like YouTube tutorials about Unity and video game design. He was that kind of self-taught. This was their first game, like their first real game. Like, yeah, they made that free one, Brian's High Velocity Research Center thing. That was made in their free time while making this main Vertigo game. This is their main first ever thing, self-taught. Geez, like what else? Like they didn't release this on Kickstarter or do early access, so they made this fully on their own budget, not getting any money in advance to throw back into the machine. of making this. Like, holy crap, I've got to give it to these guys. All the stuff and I think they even made this with the personal edition of Unity. I don't know how different it is from the professional edition or whatever, but like, you know, so many things going against them as to like, this should not have been a good game. But holy crap, it is one of the most polished VR games I've played so far. Just a really thoroughly amazing campaign. Some people might not be a fan of the visuals. However, I liked them. Yeah, it'll be nice when we do start seeing more visually rich and realistic visuals in VR, but still, I really liked the visuals. They meshed well with the audio, the music, the 8-bit chiptune kind of music and whatnot. And even though there's a lot of very graphics, very flat textures, there's a lot of stuff in this game that just looks incredible, like the bosses, the first boss and also the second boss. Geez, those visuals are just so great. So if you couldn't tell already, I am a huge fan of Vertigo. This is an easy 5 out of 5 if I had to put a number on it. This is in one of my top 10 VR experiences so far, probably in my top 3. This game was just an incredible amount of fun. So if you guys do have VR, Rift or Touch, or Rift and with Touch, or the Vive, definitely go pick this up. It is only $15. It's one of the cheaper VR experiences out there, and it is just packed full of a solid campaign. So go support these two guys that made Vertigo. So hope you guys have enjoyed this video review of Vertigo. Have a good one. Ta-ta.